Guess who's finally making their first Ever After High book club video?
Here I am, I'm coming out of the dark.
Welcome, this is my very first Ever After High book club video. As I just said, we're going to be looking at the first Ever After High book by Shannon Hale, which is the Storybook of Legends. I'm so excited. I read this book for the first time when I was probably like 11 years old, and I finally reread it. And whew, after having, because the first time I read this was before I watched the Ever After High show, the Ever After High movies, or anything. So rereading it after having seen all that stuff, whoa. There's gonna actually be 4 parts to this video. Because first of all, spoiler alert, if you don't want to be spoiled for the book, go read it. If you don't care about reading the book, if you just watch the show and you want to know all the tea from the book without having to actually, go to your local library and check it out, you can stay. I mean, if you want to spoil the book for yourself, I don't care. So first we're going to be going over some connections to Monster High. Obviously, we know since the inception of Ever After High, it's been basically a Monster High spin-off. So I'm not trying to prove that it's in the same universe as Monster High or anything. And obviously in the show, there's a lot of connections, but I just think it's interesting to look at the connections from the book specifically. Then we're just going to be going over random other fun facts from the book. So just other topics. This includes stuff like Cupid flying, Taylor Quick, and just about like the Charming family. Then we're going to be going over alternate theories. And if you're wondering why I say alternate theories, hold on a sec. Then finally, we're going to be going over the evidence that supports my swapped at birth theory for, of course, Apple and Raven. They're back here. Also, Darling's back here. Just because these are my 3 favorite Ever After High characters. I've been so excited to make this video, like you don't even know. So, I had to include my 3 favorite characters. Duh. But anyway, we're just gonna hop right into this, and again, stay till the end if you want to hear more evidence from the swapped at birth theory, because if you watch the original video, you'll remember that I got this swapped at birth idea when I very first read this book all the way back when I was 11 years old, and then come like 8 years later, actually it was like the last day of December, I made a video on TikTok about them being swapped at birth and it blew up. So we're going back to the original source of this theory to find the evidence, because in that video I didn't have the actual evidence from the book because I didn't have the book at that time when I made that video. So we're gonna get back into that. And yes, I have post-it notes because we're gonna be going through quotes from the book. Also, if you follow my TikTok, I have made TikToks about some of these quotes before, so don't be surprised if you see me repeat them from my TikTok. But just know, this video will be more in depth than those little TikToks. Okay, but first we're gonna look at the connections to Monster High. First quote is about the genie's son. This is really interesting because this does not happen in the show, but basically before actual Legacy Day, Raven wants to see like what her actual destiny includes, so she breaks into Headmaster Grimm's office. She really didn't want to be evil, but then she just goes and breaks into Headmaster Grimm's office to read the Storybook of Legends, which again, at this time, now we know that this wasn't even the real Storybook of Legends because the real one was taken by the evil queen, so this was all fake anyway. But anyway, in the book she sees signatures. She sees there was the son of the genie's signature, the goose girl's signature, Rose Red's daughter. Anyway, so the son of the genie. Who else is related to the genie? Gigi from Monster High, from Monster High 13 Wishes, who, guess what, was a player in my original Apple White and Raven Queen swapped at birth theory. And also in that same movie, The 13 Wishes, there's a reference to Giles Grimm. So that's just a fun fact. If you haven't seen the original swapped at birth theory, basically in 13 Wishes, Gigi was lonely in her lamp. So they say one of the Grimm brothers, and then the animation shows us it's Giles Grimm, the Grimm brother who was locked in the basement. He creates a friend for Gigi who becomes Wisp, who becomes the villain. Yeah. So anyway, just another connection to Gigi. Very interesting. So in that original video, I had asked, do you think Gigi originally went to Ever After High? Actually, I also made a TikTok about this. Is it possible Gigi went to Ever After High before she went to Monster High? especially because she seems to already be familiar with Giles Grimm, and also because when they're learning about Gigi and 13 Wishes and her history with Wisp, they're literally reading out of a storybook. So is it possible that she's actually from the world of Ever After High, and just like Cupid, she somehow got teleported to the world of Monster High? I don't know, but this definitely supports that. There is a ghost. Raven and Apple are looking in the Lost and Crown office, and guess who's there? A ghost! This is what it says. The ghost was thin as candle smoke and all gray from her wishy hair to her washy skirt. She had a delicate little face with a tiny nose and pointy chin. She bore 3 smoky fingers on each hand, and they never stopped moving, stroking the air like a cat on the back of the sofa. She sat perched on top of a large chair made of seashells, and then she said, "Boo." "Boo," Raven and Apple said in return. It was the proper thing to say when greeting a ghost. So this is kind of interesting because in The Legend of Shadow High, which is this other book, which is actually the only Ever After High and Monster High crossover that exists since the movie got canceled, they kind of mentioned that, like, there's no such thing as monsters in Ever After, and they're kind of, like, shocked by Frankie and Draculaura, which, to be fair, sure. But maybe ghosts to them don't count as monsters because, there's definitely ghosts in Ever After High. And, again, I should probably have done more research about this, but I believe in Monster High, Spectra's origin is questionable. Okay, in Spectra's diary, it says this. "I come from royalty, of course. My father was next in line for the throne of a large and powerful kingdom, but my jealous uncle plotted against him, and we had to go into exile. Sadly, my father and mother were forced to take jobs far below their station in life to support us. It's all quite tragic. Of course, and I'm still debating if I should add this part in about my long-lost love who still haunts our ancestral castle, awaiting my return, or my family's daring escape across enemy territory in the dead of night during the storm of the century." So, is it possible that Spectra could have originally been from Ever After, and this whole story that she's telling about, like, her royal family actually took place in Ever After, and when it says they escaped across enemy lines, maybe that meant they went into the monster world? I guess it's debatable because on her wiki page, I guess it talks about how she could have just been making this whole thing up and how, like, she likes to make up stories, but she almost kind of convinces herself these stories are true, and how her friends remind her, "Oh no, you're not from, like, you're not royalty, you're just a ghost from the 19th century, but, like, her actual past, if this is not her past, is unknown." And my thing is, maybe she knows for sure, like, this is actually her past, but she can't get too detailed with it with her friends, because just like how Cupid can't tell the girls at Ever After High about Monster High, maybe she's forbidden to tell the other girls at Monster High that Ever After High exists. So whenever she talks about her past royalty, but she can't go into detail, they just think that she's making it up because she can't actually say that she's from the fairy tale world. And I do think it's interesting how her friends say that she's making up stories when the fairy tale world is literally made up of stories. Now we are moving on to our second section for the video, which is just random interesting facts or just things that are in the book that are not shown in the show that are really interesting. So in the show, we know that Dexter, Darling, and Daring are siblings. It's maybe mentioned like once that Dexter and Darling are twins. So basically, what this fun fact is about is that Dexter mentions in the book that he doesn't know what his destiny is, which, like, okay, that makes sense because he could be like any Prince Charming, but like also Daring somehow magically knows what his destiny is. So then that brought up the question to me, was Daring even ever supposed to be Apple's prince? I think he was just always supposed to be the Beast because of how he acts, and Darling was always supposed to wake Apple and Dexter, I do think he should end up with Raven, but I think maybe like if we want to go with fairy tale destiny, because they never mention who Ashlyn's Prince Charming was supposed to be. Like, she gets a lot of backlash for dating Hunter, but I'm like, okay, who was her Prince Charming supposed to be? And the only answer really is Dexter. So I think that's what his original destiny was. He never finds out, because even if he did get to sign the Storybook of Legends, which he doesn't, to find out it was a fake one anyway, and obviously this fake one showed Daring and Apple that they were supposed to end up together, which was not true. Headmaster Grimm just made that up. But then we also have to bring in the question, like, where does the real Storybook of Legends come from? Like, where does that book even get its, like, authority? Like, is that even true? And then this part of the book also brings up the fact, let me try to find the quote, that basically Dexter and Darling are exactly 9 months younger than Daring. So that's how they're in the same class, even when they're different ages. Daring's lanky brother Dexter, just 9 months younger, jogged up the stairs, stumbling up the step. Yeah, so this is at the Legacy Day, like, rehearsal or whatever. So another thing that happens in the book is that some of the people just, like, randomly have superpowers. So Briar has a superpower, and her superpower is that while sleeping, she can, like, hear things. So basically her and Apple are stuck in this tower in their princess class, and the princes were supposed to come rescue them, but then the princes get caught up with something, so their teacher's like, just figure out your own way out, like, be creative. So this is what it says. Briar had lots of inconvenient naps, but the naps came with an advantage. While sleeping, she absorbed gossip spoken beyond the normal hearing range, so she's able to spy on some people and figure out how the other people got out of the tower, so her and Apple can get out of their tower. So next quote, and this is just Cupid flying. We've had, like, a whole debate about Cupid, like, flying on my TikTok. Whew. So, like, in the show, in Monster High and Ever After High, in the show, she never flies. So part of me thinks, like, canonically in the show, she is not supposed to be able to fly, that her wings are just, like, an accessory. But then in the book she flies, which contradicts that. And there's nothing that, like, specifically says the book is not canon. But also part of me, like, Shannon Hale wrote this, and at the end of the book she kind of leaves a note like, oh, thank you Mattel for letting me, like, do my take on the Ever After High universe. So I do think that you can interpret the book canon as slightly different from the show. So just because she flies here doesn't mean, like, in Monster High and Ever After High, like the shows, she's canonically able to fly. But this is what it says. They're playing basketball, which is not what you're thinking. It's like they hold baskets full of food and they have to run a ball across the court while avoiding hungry wolves who are trying to eat their food baskets. But Cupid, this is what it says. Cupid was flapping her wings furiously, rising above the court. So she just avoids problems by flying, I guess. This one is heavy. This is Apple's tragic backstory, and we're also gonna mention this in our next section of this video, so I'm just gonna brush over this lightly, but basically, like, when Apple was little, she fell down a well and she almost died, and it was very traumatic for her. And then we have another fun fact. 2 fun facts in one, because these are right next to each other. This is, like, I don't think, this is not Dexter and Raven's first time meeting, but, like, this is, like, their first time, like, kind of connecting to each other. And basically what happens is, I'm not gonna read it for quote, but Dexter was on the balcony singing Taylor Quick, which is the equivalent to Taylor Swift, and then Raven finds him and he's super embarrassed, but then Raven's like, no, I like Taylor Quick too. So basically the funny thing is, like, Raven and Dexter fall in love. They both love Taylor Swift. Like, this whole thing is just very, very ironic to me. Continuing, so, like, this is interesting because in the show Nevermore just, like, kind of pops up in Dragon games, and we're expected to know who Nevermore is, yet Nevermore has never been mentioned before in the show. Guess what? Nevermore came from the books. This is the scene where all the Ever After High students actually get pets, but most importantly, Raven gets Nevermore. So this is what it says. Raven was sitting on the ground facing the dragon. The dragon lowered its head to her level, gazing right into her eyes. It snuffled, smelling Raven, her hair rising up the gust of its breath. Not in the mood to spit fire, she asked. The dragon shrugged. Yeah, me neither. So that's really cute. That's when Raven first meets Nevermore. And I just think it's really cute that they have this moment in the book. So if you want to see more of Raven and Nevermore, read the books. Okay, this is another random fact. So Raven and Apple are trying to sneak out of the castle. And they don't have this in the show, but because in the show they also sneak out of the castle and they don't have any problems. But in the book, these night briars come up, which like think about like the briars in Sleeping Beauty around the castle. Like that, yeah. So they're having a little struggle sneaking out through these briars because you're not supposed to be able to get through them. So when they are in the night briars, Ashlyn's trying to help them through by like singing, but then it's not working. So then she kind of goes to get Hunter, but you know, at this point they don't know her and Hunter are dating. So they don't really know what she's doing, but she's gonna go get Hunter to like chop through the briars for them because, fun fact, the reason Ashlyn was actually outside in the first place at night was to meet up with Hunter, but again, Raven and Apple don't know this. Raven kind of starts to catch on to it. But it says, just then Prince Daring walked by as if out for an evening stroll. And then Raven opened her mouth to call for him. Shh, said Apple. So basically, they don't want to call the Daring because they don't want, they know he's like a goody two-shoes and he's going to get them in trouble. But I just find it interesting. Like, a lot of times in Ever After High, they'll have these like random details that they draw attention to, such as Apple's hair, which we're going to get to later. But like another thing that they randomly draw attention to is Cerise, like, and her hood and how it's suspicious. And then guess what? We find out she's part wolf, you know? So usually when they have these like little call outs, or like here they were like talking about how both Ashlyn and Hunter were out at the same time. But now we're just like mysteriously bringing up the fact that Daring's randomly out for an evening stroll. And it's kind of odd for him, since he's a goody two-shoes, to be out at night. So my thing is, they don't say what Daring is wearing, but what if it was actually Darling in the suit of armor? Because, you know, in the show, when Darling's in the suit of armor, they mistake her for Daring. So could this be like the first time canonically we actually see Daring in this, or Darling in the suit of armor, and we don't even know? Like, if the thing is, like, if this was animated, we'd be like, oh my gosh, that's like the White Knight, like that's Darling's suit of armor. But because it's a book, like, we have no way of knowing if that was actually Daring or Darling. Very interesting. This video is gonna be so long. Okay, this one is page 178, and this is not really that important, but basically they're talking about the Beauty Sleep Festival, because that's going to happen in this book, and that's where everybody like sleeps, and that's in honor of like Briar Beauty, Sleeping Beauty, their destiny. And they're talking about how they have a spring cleaning ball later on for Ashlyn's destiny. And you know, in the show, I do think like they have that, like, I forget what it's called, but like that apple festival, you know, where like for Apple's birthday everybody like bakes pies or something. So it's just kind of mentioning that like each of the royals have a festival, which is honestly kind of selfish. And I get why Raven is like, what the heck is going on with you royals? Like, you guys are all just like, like you're spoiled. This is really, okay, this one is a call out for me. So I'm somebody who wears glasses. Do I wear glasses all the time? No. I mean, I probably could, but I don't have to. I only wear them when I need to. I don't wear contacts or anything. My prescription's not high enough, so honestly, it'd just be a waste of money for contacts, because most of the time I can get through my everyday life without wearing glasses at all. Like, sometimes maybe I have to ask somebody what a sign says, but you know, when I go to school and I need to see the board, I'll wear glasses. I'm fine to go about my day without wearing glasses because I'm nearsighted. But Apple is apparently just like me, and again, this is something maybe they might bring it up like once in the show. I don't even know if they bring it up. They're on their like little mission in the woods, and Raven says, "It's pretty creepy here," Raven said. Apple startled. "Is that a wolf looking at us?" "What wolf?" "Right there," Apple said, pointing. You mean that tree stump? You're nearsighted, aren't you?" "What? Don't be ridiculous. Apple, you squint at things all the time. I've seen your glasses case on your desk. You don't have to hide with me. I'm not going to think you're less than perfect if you wear glasses." Apple sniffed. She pulled her red framed glasses out of her backpack and slid them on. This just reminds me so much of myself, because sometimes like I'll think I'll see something like in the distance, because sometimes things are kind of blurry. Like I'll be like, "Oh, is there a car there?" And my sister will be like, "No, that's not a car. That's like a trash can." But anyway, Yeah, so the point is, like, I really think I'm more similar to Raven, but then every day I start questioning, am I actually more similar to Apple? This is just another random fun fact. On page 247, they explain how Raven got her Legacy Day outfit, because I used to have complaints. I'd be like, why is everybody wearing a dress and why is she wearing pants? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, I get it for Maddie, like, why she wore pants, but I'm like, why is she, like, look like she's wearing casual clothes and then, like, a cape over it? Like, I used to not like this doll. Now I like it. Obviously, I love her. But basically what happened is she walked into the room where she was supposed to get her mom's Legacy Day outfit, because they're all supposed to be wearing their mom's clothes, except, you know, it's also mentioned that Briar Beauty also altered her mom's dress. But what happens is, I'm not going to read this word for word. This is on page 247. She walks in the room and she's like, no, she, like, can't put on her mom's dress. It's kind of freaking her out. So she just, like, puts on the crown and the cape because she likes them. But she didn't, like, want to become her mother exactly. So then she just wears the leggings and shirt that she was wearing that day. And I think she honestly slayed the look, now knowing that. So this is our last random fun fact for the day. This is page 276. And this is, like, at the after party. So they don't show this in the show. But in the book, there was, like, supposed to be an after party after Legacy Day. And then, you know, after Raven ruined it, like, all the royals try to go and, like, not let the rebels in. But, you know, they still come. And when they show up, Lizzie says, off with their heads, Lizzie Hart shouted, red faced and stomping, off with all their heads. And I just think it's, like, funny how mad she is, because a lot of people point out, like, she has two completely different personalities in the show. For, like, in the very first episodes of the show, she's always just very mean and very standoffish. And then by the time Spring Unsprung comes around, she's very, like, nice, very understanding. And I don't know when that episode happened with her and Daring where she went on that date. I don't know if that was before Spring Unsprung, but in that episode, we really kind of get to see, like, her outer personality versus her inner personality. And this seemed very much like her outer, like, defensive personality. So I honestly don't even really know if she was mad that the rebels weren't following her destiny, or if she, again, like, she talks about this in the show, she was trying very strongly to be like her mother, be like a strong queen or whatever, or if she's just using this as an excuse to, you know, show her, like, angry Queen of Hearts self. Because honestly, I don't think she really cares if people follow their destinies or not, in my opinion. Okay, now we are going to be moving on to possible alternate theories besides the Apple White and Raven Queen were swapped at birth. So I feel like I need to explain myself at this part of the video. Yes, I do, like, there's, like, a strong, at least, like, 50% of me that's like, yes, Apple and Raven were 100% swapped at birth. That's, like, me 50% of the time. I know these percentages are getting confusing. So, like, yeah. But then there's also part of me that's like, I do for sure think they were trying to set up something between Apple and Raven. And I don't mean, like, setting them up as, like, a ship. I mean, like, setting up some sort of mystery where somehow they were gonna swap roles in some way, or somehow Apple's destiny is not what she thought it was. I definitely think they were setting something up like that, just because of the sheer amount that, like, it's brought up how weird Apple's hair is, and there's just other odd things that are brought up in the book. So in this section, the alternate theories section, I'm gonna be looking at possible other alternate theories that could explain, like, all these random details that seem to be setting up something else besides the plot that we actually got to see, or just a plot that never got to be done. Maybe it was going to be done in a book and it never got to be done in a book. Maybe this is a possible plot. I do think, I'm just gonna go out here and say it, I don't think Epic Winter was supposed to happen. I think originally they had a different movie plan for After Dragon Games. I think Epic Winter was just kind of like what they made because they're like, oh shoot, we need to make a final Ever After High movie. Like, we're no longer doing the Monster High crossover. Like, I think they just didn't know what to do, and that's what happened. And they were like, you know what, kids? They really like Elsa. They really like Frozen. Let's just go for a winter vibe. Let's just do it. I do think they probably would have still played out the Daring Rosabella Beast storyline in some way. But like, we never got to see, like, like, I feel like there was a lot of stuff in Dragon Games that, like, kind of cleared up, like, Apple and Raven's, like, relationship and, like, their plot. But, like, there was also a lot of more questions that were made. Like, we never got to, like, see the results of the darling Apple kiss, like, in any way. And we also never got to, like, if there was something to more as to why Apple has blonde hair. We never got to see, like, what the actual explanation was, if there was anything more. I do think there was something more, and I think the books were setting it up. So, sorry for the ramble, but we're gonna get into the alternate theories, and I'm so excited. We are going back to page 111. This is the same area where Raven says she saw the Son of Genie's signature, but she also saw the signature of Rose Red's daughter. Do you know who Rose Red is? So if you don't know, besides the fairy tale of Snow White, there's another fairy tale called Rose Red and Snow White. Or Snow White and Rose Red. I forget how it goes. But basically in this fairy tale, there's a Snow White and there's a Rose Red. Now, how does the Snow White differ from the Snow White that's in Snow White? Well, instead of having black hair and fair skin, this Snow White has fair hair, so like really blonde, like platinum blonde hair, and fair skin, and then Rose Red, you know, has red hair. So maybe instead of being the the apple, or not the apple, and maybe instead of being the Snow White from Snow White, Apple was supposed to be the Snow White from Rose Red. And my theory is, maybe, let's say, in the original plot of Ever After High, I think if this was going to be the original plot, they probably would have scrapped it. Let's say when they found the real Storybook of Legends, Apple chose to look at what her real destiny would have been, and she finds out that she was in no way meant to be Snow White, but she was meant to be Snow White, if you know what I'm saying. And then she would have been like, oh my gosh, my whole thing's a lie. I'm not gonna get my happily ever. And she would have freaked out, basically. Not that it's that different, like she still probably would have ended up with a prince, but it's also interesting to mention that Snow White and Rose Red, there is like a beast or like a prince that's turned into a beast in this fairy tale, which if we're going for the fact that Daring was planned to be like the beast from the beginning, maybe originally he was going to be the beast in this fairy tale instead of like in actually Beauty and the Beast, and maybe instead of Rosabella we would have had like a character who would have ended up being Rose Red, because honestly I forget if the beast in Rose Red and Snow White actually ended up with Snow White or if he ended up with Rose Red, because there was two princes, one was a beast, one was not. So anyway, maybe that was an alternate theory maybe that was an alternate timeline in the Ever After High universe that got scrapped because of like Dragon Games and Way to Wonderland. Let's move on to our next alternate theory, Apple's tragic backstory. That's what this quote says. Oh, we talked about this earlier. This is page 120, and this page goes with another quote that we're going to get to in a few minutes. But it's important to know Apple's tragic backstory because it honestly shows why she's so worried about Raven not signing the book, because she's literally afraid she's gonna die. And this is the time that she almost died. So let me read this. She'd been chasing a dragonfly and climbed onto the well's ledge. Then a seemingly endless fall that ended in a freezing splash, struggle, and then gasp for life. She treaded water, her heavy petticoats pulling her down. She didn't have the breath to either scream or sing for help. It was the first time in her life that she'd ever felt alone or cold or really truly scared. So anyway, she was eventually rescued, but like she thought she was gonna die in that well. Now, what does this have to do with an alternate theory? I have to tell you about the two sisters. Okay, so in the book, Raven and Apple are looking for this character named Bella's sister, and they find out that she was from the Tale of Two Sisters and she never signed the Storybook of Legends, so they're trying to find out what the Tale of the Two Sisters is and who Bella's sister is. So here's Raven reading what the Tale of the Two Sisters is. Raven read about the beautiful sister, in this case Bella's sister is the beautiful sister, who was so cruel flies were drawn to her and constantly buzzed around her head. The ugly sister was so kind, butterflies followed her everywhere and curled up in her hair like jeweled pins. One day at the well, the beautiful sister had the ugly sister lower her into the water in order to drown the buzzing flies. After coming out, she was grumpy to be so cold and wet. She wanted the ugly sister to suffer too, so she pushed her into the water. The ugly sister wept that the butterflies in her hair had drowned. Now, if you remember the quote that I read before, you guys, about Apple and the well, Apple, it doesn't explain if she was pushed into the well. I think she just fell into the well. But she was also very cold in the well. And this is just an odd parallel. So when I first read this, I was like, is this some parallel? Like, is Raven supposed to be the beautiful sister and Apple to be the ugly sister? But wait, Raven didn't actually push Apple into the well. Like, what is this supposed to be saying? Like, is there an alternate theory here? Or, like, Raven and Apple actually, like, supposed to be, like, the sisters or something? I don't know. My best guess is that this is just a parallel to Apple and Raven. Because, you know, Bella's sister was the sister who didn't want to sign because she didn't want to hurt the ugly sister. And if the ugly sister is Apple, because the ugly sister is the one who gets pushed into the well, like Apple almost drowned in the well. It's just interesting. I think it's just supposed to be like a parallel, like, you know, some, you know, actual like author technique things to like do a parallel. That's all I think it is. I don't think like it's actually like Apple is literally the ugly sister and Raven is literally the beautiful sister. I think it's just supposed to be a parallel. Now, is Apple maybe literally supposed to be the Snow White from Rose Red? I don't know. This is the whole stepmom controversy. I've had so many discussions on TikTok about this, and thinking about this makes my head hurt. So I kind of just like to pretend that this quote is not canon because it makes no sense. But basically, Raven says, "So wait, would I become your stepmom?" "Huh?" asked Apple. In the story, wasn't the evil queen Snow White's stepmom? Well, she was in our parents' stories, but Apple stared as if trying to fathom. But no, it was unfathomable. Raven scrunched up her face. Just how would that work? It will. Somehow, each generation's story must be a little different than the last, right? I mean, I'll be blonde Snow White. Again, they're mentioning the blonde thing. Okay. You just have to trust that the story will work out in the end. Okay. So, anyway, this just makes my head hurt. Because what I remembered, like, again, when I made my other Apple White and Raven Queen were swept at birth video, I don't know if I mentioned this, but what I remembered is I thought that they had just said, like, the original Snow White and Raven and Evil Queen were like stepmom and stepdaughter, but here it makes it sound like they're saying Raven's mom was Apple's stepmom, which if you watch the show, that is not at all true, because like they were the same age, they went to school together, unless when the evil queen married the good king who's Raven's dad, he was like much older. But if what they're saying is true, like at least for the book timeline, that would mean that Raven's dad is also Apple's grandfather, and this just makes my head hurt. But basically, Apple and Raven would be biologically related, which if we want to go with the beautiful sister, ugly sister, like that whole thing, that's another parallel because now they're related. I don't know. Which is also weird because it's not even like it would make sense if it was like, oh yeah, the evil queen and the good king like actually like each other. But for what Raven says, like they don't even actually like each other, so why did they even get married? I don't know, this just brings up so many more plot holes. So I just like to pretend like that quote does not exist. This is Raven's nightmare. This just opens up a whole can of worms. So let me just read it to you. Raven, lying on a sandy ground covered in creepy crawlies, spiders, cockroaches, termites, ants, crickets. They smother her, nibble on her, devouring her from her toenails in seconds, leaving just a skeleton behind. Apple standing at the podium on Legacy Day. Poof! She disappears and reappears in a goblin cave. The goblin troupe move in, brandishing salad bowls and chopping knives. Daring Charming, no story to call home, thins and melts into the wisp of a ghost. swimming endlessly through the walls. The crowded charmatorium at Ever After High, Headmaster Grimm on the stage, and remember, students, no matter what you do, don't follow the examples of the worst, most despised, most selfish character in all of Ever After High history, Raven Queen. Boo, the students yell. Boo, says the daring ghost. Apple's head in the goblin bowl opens her eyes and looks straight at Raven. Boo. Okay, I don't know. This whole dream sequence just is like freaking, like, it's kind of really scary. And like, they could not get away with animating this in the show. Like, Raven literally turns into a skeleton. Apple's head apparently gets chopped off and put into like a salad bowl or something. And, I mean, they could probably get away with the daring turning into a ghost. But I think it's interesting that they say a wisp of a ghost. I was like, is that a reference to Wisp from Monster High? I don't know. But also, this also parallels Raven with the Beautiful Sister. Because if you don't know, if you haven't read the book, basically, Raven and Apple go on this expedition to find the Beautiful Sister. And they find a skeleton in a cave. Yeah, this is where they find the skeleton. So maybe like Raven's just self-inserting this into her dream that she's also gonna turn into a skeleton. But it's another thing that parallels Raven with the Beautiful Sister, aka Bella. So that's interesting. But also, FYI, if you haven't read the book and you want to know, this skeleton was planted by Headmaster Grimm. Bella's sister did not actually turn into a skeleton. Headmaster Grimm just completely made that up. But you know, where did he get that skeleton from? Because it seemed pretty realistic. Is he like secretly a murderer? I don't know. A portal to Wonderland. So, you know how in the show, there's that Well of Wonder that's also like a portal to Wonderland that mysteriously was never closed? Yeah. So, this is the note that Bella's sister left behind. I don't want to be the mean, beautiful sister. I don't want to drown my awesome little sister, Bretta, but I'm going to do it. Besides, she's not ugly, that's just mean to call someone that hateful word. We found a spell that will change our well into a portal. By the time anyone finds this note, we'll be long gone into another world where we're not forced to relive our stupid stories. So, you know, my question is, did they create the portal to Wonderland? So, obviously, this was like, I think the Bella sister thing was supposed to happen like 100 years before. But, you know, could Bella's sister and her other sister, the ugly sister in this case was named Britta, could their descendants be living on in Wonderland? That's just my question. This is not really an alternative theory, it's more just a question, I guess. This is Giles Grimm spilling all the tea. And Maddie's translating for him because he can only speak Riddlish. Haha, I wonder why he can only speak Riddlish. He said, Legacy Day is a hoax, and the Storybook of Legends holds no real power, said Maddie. Or maybe he said Legacy Day is hilarious, and the Storybook of Legends is a monster. On a wing with a rose, on a chair for chose, with a puppy and a pig in his pocket. Anyway, Giles Grimm basically tells Maddie Legacy Day is a hoax and the Storybook of Legends has no real power. So my question is he trying to tell her that the Storybook of Legends that they have is fake? Or is he saying that, like, even the original, like, the real Storybook of Legends has no power over them whatsoever? Because, you know, even once the real Storybook of Legends gets kidnapped or, like, goes missing, you know, life continues on. Like, so did the real, like, original Storybook of Legends even have any power? That's the question. Do they all live in a simulation? I don't know. A simulation created by who? You know, Milton Grimm. Alternative theory time, because this is our alternative theory section. You know, maybe Headmaster Grimm, you know, Giles Grimm and Milton Grimm were not from Ever After. Maybe they were like authors in the real world, and then somehow they transposed themselves into this fairy tale world. But, you know, once they were there, they still wanted to control the fairy tales, so they just, like, you know, made everybody lock themselves into contracts in the Storybook of Legends, you know, contracts that actually had no meaning and just gaslit everybody into following them. And then, you know, Giles Grimm started to feel bad. But then Milton Grimm was like, oh, no. And then he cursed him to speak only Wonderlandian. So, you know, everything was fake. That's the alternative theory. Which, honestly, it doesn't even sound like a theory. Like, it literally sounds true. Like, I literally don't know what else happened. I talked about this before, so we're not going to spend that much time on this. Basically, I'm not going to read it quote for quote, but after after Raven did not sign the Storybook of Legends, Darling fainted, which is, sus. Because first of all, I don't think Darling would actually faint because, she didn't really want to actually follow her destiny. My theory is that it was more of a distraction so that Raven could get away because, after this, all the princes kind of try to go up and kill Raven or something because they think that she just made everybody go poof. Or, not that everybody actually went poof, but they, thought she was going to, destroy their whole world by not signing. So all the princes go and try and attack Raven because, they're trying to be heroic. But this is ironic because as we find out later in the show, Darling is kind of, actually, the truest prince or, the person who is actually able to wake Apple from her coma. Basically, Darling's just, actually saving Raven by fainting because when she faints, and all the princes try to help her instead of going to attack Raven. And it's just, a silent act of heroism. Now it is the time. We get to move on to section 4 of this video. The actual evidence to show that Apple was swapped at birth with Raven. I just want to point out that it is mentioned 4 times, at least 4 times in this book, Apple's hair color. So if you don't know, the real life explanation to why Apple's hair is blonde and not black is because Mattel was trying to avoid copyright issues with Disney. Basically, they didn't want Disney to be like, hey, Apple White looks too similar to Snow White, send them a cease and desist, blah, 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 blah. Even though Snow White is a public domain character, Disney does hold, the copyright to this specific image of Snow White, which honestly, Apple looks nothing like that, so they didn't have a problem anyway, even if she had black hair, but they were just trying their best to avoid it. But, if that's the real world explanation, but if there was nothing more to it than that, I don't see why they would bring up her hair being blonde so many times. Again, this is bordering on the fact of them being oh, and Cerise was mysteriously wearing a hood. Why was she wearing a hood? Why do we never see her hair, So we're just going to go through all those times. So first on page 20. So beautiful, said a manservant, the perfect Snow White. Well, except for her hair. A shame she was born blonde. Apple winced. I think her blonde hair is even lovelier than her mother's black hair. So, her servants are just trash talking her, I guess. The next time, Apple talks to Baba Yaga. You don't have black hair, Baba Yaga said suddenly. Apple sighed. No, I don't. The older generation just couldn't let the blonde hair thing go. Your mother had black hair. It was a part of her story. Snow white skin, ebony black hair, blood red lips. I guess when it's my story, that part will change, since I was born a blonde. Baba Yaga leaned forward and said, I find you extremely disappointing. So why does she find Apple disappointing? Let's say Apple and Raven were actually swapped at birth. And if you don't know the theory, the theory is that they were swapped at birth because there's other evidence, but basically Snow White has black hair, Raven has black hair, the Evil Queen has platinum blonde hair, Apple has platinum blonde hair, or close to platinum blonde. So let's say Baba Yaga did know that they were swapped at birth. Maybe that's why she finds Apple White disappointing, because maybe it was kind of an experiment for Headmaster Grimm, and maybe she finds Apple disappointing because, her hair is not the correct color. I don't know. But maybe, I don't know. Baba Yaga is also just a villain, so maybe that's why. Okay, here's the next time. So I read this quote before in the last section, but this is right after the part about how they're talking about the stepmom thing, and that's and how that's not gonna happen for them. Raven's not gonna marry Apple's dad, but Apple says it will. Somehow each generation's story must be a little bit different. I mean, I'll be a blonde Snow White. You just have to trust that the story will work out in that. So this is when Apple is actually signing the Storybook of Legends, and she sees her life, flash before her eyes. She says, she looks so much like her mother, only blonde. Baba Yaga wouldn't approve, but Apple did. Again, they're bringing it back to Baba Yaga's comment. It makes it seem like Baba Yaga's comment meant something a little more. Let's get on to the other fun facts besides just the hair that, support the Apple and Raven were swapped at birth theory. So this is, Apple spying on Raven through the mirrors. Let me tell you, in what fairy tale does somebody spy on somebody through mirrors? Yeah, it is Snow White, but you know, it's the evil queen spying on Snow White. So, you know, Apple senses that Raven doesn't want to, you know, follow her destiny. So she wants to keep track of Raven. So you know what she does? She goes to Humphrey, who's Humpty Dumpty's son. He's really smart with computers. So she asks him to hack into the mirror network so she can watch Raven's whereabouts through all the mirrors around the school. So nice, Apple. Again, this really reminds me of that scene from the show where Apple's talking to the mirror and she's just acting like the evil queen. This is just like another one of those moments where I'm like, why? Like, there has to be something more to this. Like, why are there all these mentions of Apple and mirrors? Like, there has to be something more to this. Come on. So Raven has a natural inclination to sing. This is on page 193, and it just talks about how Raven really likes to sing. Which, you know, she talks about this, like, you know, music class is very important to her in the book. She really, like, she's like, please have an Instagram, I'll take all the villain classes, just please let me put music in my schedule. And it's just talking about how she's nervous to sing in front of Apple. But, you know, again, singing is something very important to Snow White's destiny. It's something very important to Raven, but Raven feels like she has to hide it. Interesting. So here's another scene. So this is like when Raven and Apple are on their little mission looking for Bella's sister. This is before they find her skeleton. They're going through the woods and they interact with these goblins, which when I see this, I just like think of like the fungi or whatever from Barbie Fairytopia, Barbie Mermaidia. I also watched Barbie Mermaidia last night, but I think of these when they're talking about these like goblins. But basically they want to eat Apple, which like, again, this is like something I don't think would happen in the show. This is definitely something that would happen in a Barbie movie though. Like, this literally happens in Mariposa. So Raven makes a deal with these goblins where she's like, yeah, if you help us, you can eat Apple. And by apple, she means like a literal apple. And then, you know, they kind of get mad. But then, oh my gosh, like Raven had like a really hard time speaking up to them, which, you know, Apple also does too, clearly, because they're scary. But then once they like try to grab Apple just, you know, goes off. She goes, why, how dare you? I am Princess Applewhite, daughter of Snow White, and future queen. Take your hands off me at once, or I swear by the wishing wells, 7-league boots, silver wands, and all marvelous things that you will regret it. I don't know. Like, I feel like in, you know, Snow White's destiny, like, if she's more of like a damsel in distress, like she would have waited for like a prince. Not that there was a prince in the woods, but you know, she would have let like Raven handle it or something, because Raven was gonna like blast them with magic. But like, not that would have gone well, because Raven's magic kept backfiring. But just like how she spoke up to them with authority just like gives me evil queen vibes. Like, how dare you? You will regret it. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to talk about Raven's magic backfiring. So Raven's trying to get Apple to like stop these bugs that are attacking them, and Raven says, I can't, that would be a good thing, and my magic always backfires, especially when I try to do something good. The bugs kept coming, so basically the bugs keep calling, and Raven's afraid to use her magic, as I just mentioned earlier in the other scene, because it always backfires when she does something good, which is interesting. That doesn't necessarily happen in the show, but you know, different timeline. People are always like, okay, how does Raven have powers if she's actually Snow White's daughter? Well, part of the theory is that the reason they were swapped is because their powers got swapped, but they still have like deep down inside of them like aspects of who they are originally supposed to be. So like, even though Apple like can sing to birds and does all the stuff that Snow White does, like she can sing, she can communicate with animals, deep down inside there's a part of her that's like angry and is like selfish like the evil queen. And then for Raven, you know, outside she can do like evil magic, but inside she really just like a little sweetie. And she does also sing, you know, that was like a little secret for her. So yeah, Raven's magic is just completely incompatible with who she is as a person, and I really do feel like if Apple was in Raven's shoes, if Apple had Raven's destiny, she would honestly just accept it. Like, just think about that. Like, she'd be like, yeah, I want this power, I want this. Like, she would totally be the evil queen. I could totally see it. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe. And of course, my TikTok, if you want more Ever After High content, will be linked below. And also my Instagram for updates. Make sure to follow me there. Sorry if this video is like really split up. I kept running out of storage. So I was having issues with that. But, like, I just found out, like, apparently TikTok takes up a ton of room on your phone, so make sure you delete your drafts because they take up a lot of space. So, bye, guys!